really grateful for all the panelists. Thank you for being here. I see that everybody is prepared. And I just want to dive into the first question right away. And this is a question to get to know you a little bit better. We would like to ask each of you to share with us what's your background. Do you come from the operational side, the technical side, the finance side? And in that regard, to elaborate a little bit on your understanding of what are the most important attributes of successful leaders in the mining industry today. So for that, I will start with Kenneth, please.
Thank you, Isabel. It's a pleasure being on your panel today, and I trust we'll have a very, very productive hour ahead of us. So my background is mechanical engineering, and in 1980, I went into the oil and gas business and stayed with the resource sector for the duration of my career. I was involved in oil and gas production in Texas and Oklahoma, Mississippi, then went into mining in the Congo. I spent some years building up a portfolio of projects in the Congo, developing them into all the way through feasibility study stage, and endured this civil war that was going on there for a period of time. And then I went into renewable energy in Canada. My colleague John Darch and I, we became partners in a company called International Panorama that was developing a geothermal resource in British Columbia, Canada. And then we moved into California, and eventually the company got taken over in 2009. Subsequent to that, I set up a renewable energy in the Philippines, a renewable energy company that was developing both geothermal and hydropower in the Philippines. And that company was sold to a large conglomerate in the Philippines in 2014. And since that time, I've been focusing my attention on Sonoro. And we've been building up the company slowly and steadily over the past 5 years as a result of that. Now, the one thing that is essential for any company CEO is to have the vision. And without the vision, you're not going to get to your destination. And our vision has always been to acquire good, solid projects that had a great chance of success from an exploration perspective. And don't we all want that, of course? But more importantly, having the capability to bring it through to fruition. And we have a technical team in Mexico with over 100 years of experience in Mexico in developing exploration projects and bringing them all the way through the financing, through the development phase, and all the way through to construction and operation. And that development team is with us to this day. And with the vision of the entire team solidified, where every single person on our management and technical team have shared the same vision and expect us to go into production at a specific date over the coming year. And we firmly believe that we can achieve that. And all the evidence, all the work we've been doing over the past year is leading to that final conclusion.
Excellent, very interesting. As you say, the human capital is the most important thing in the mining companies. Excellent. And now I would like to go to Jason. What are your thoughts on this, Jason?
Well, thank you, Isabel. I'll start by saying I'm the son of a French-Canadian mother and a British father. So much like Ken, I got bounced around the world in the oil and gas industry. Spent my early childhood living in Indonesia. My first language was Bahasa. I went to university in a little place called Halifax, Nova Scotia. And that upbringing gave me two things, an interest in travel and no fear of hard work. So I started in the base metals business in the mid-90s as a mining engineer. And about 10 years into my career, I found my calling as an operational leader. And I've spent the remainder of my career leading operations through increasing responsibility. And now I'm the CEO of Orla. Throughout my career, I had the opportunity to travel the globe for different companies. And I had a number of important mentors in my life. And, I think mentorship is incredibly important. And what they taught me is that if you have a genuine care for people inside and outside of the company, that's the most important. So I think part of the question was what influences my decision-making. My decision-making is influenced by a care for people. Those people include, of course, employees, shareholders, communities, and all of them relying on me as the leader of the company to help their benefit. So that's a bit about my background and what sort of drives my thinking.
Excellent. And in that regard, the last thing is, what do you think are the most important attributes of successful leaders in the mining industry today? You spoke a little bit about you. Is there anything else you would like to add on that regard?
Yeah, I think, mining leaders need to balance a lot of things in their job. Some of the things that I've mentioned related to stakeholder management. The shareholders have expectations, your employees have expectations, the societies where you work have expectations. I know there's a lot of discussion through this conference about ESG, and that's really the root of those sorts of discussions. So a leader has to understand the complexity of balancing all of those things, because they're not always aligned, and being able to find solutions where in many cases others perhaps cannot see the solution is important for the leader to help the team with. And so, having the right people on your team, they often find the solutions, making sure that they have an environment that their efforts are appreciated, and then having the drive to resolve problems and find solutions, I think, are important for leaders.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. And now I would like to go to Doug, please.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on this panel this morning. I'm a mining geologist by degree, although early on in my life, my fascination with the capital markets took me into the investment banking world. Subsequent to that, I moved to Canada from the UK and have spent the best part of the last 20 years working in various capacities with the kind of the junior mining company end of the spectrum. A couple of years ago, I merged my company with my colleague Darren Koenigen's company to form Minera Alamos, and must say, to me, the key attribute, in terms of success and leadership is surrounding yourself with the right people. We are coming into a better precious metals market, but even in the worst of times, I enjoyed every single minute of it because of the people. And especially in a country like Mexico, where, I think more than ever, the relationships between mining companies and communities are so important. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with a group that take that responsibility so seriously. When I'm projecting the face of the company, I know that the engine, the driver of that company's activities, starts very much at that community level. Really doesn't matter how great your project might be if you don't approach the community side of things appropriately. So, for me, like great politicians, they've always surrounded themselves by great teams. And often it's the politician that might be the face of an administration, but the hard work is done behind the scenes. And that includes, approaching every topic, including the previous panel on ESG, appropriately. When we operate in Mexico, we become part of that community. And so it's been a great privilege to work with a team. And so, I could echo a lot of the points that Jason and Ken have raised, but yeah, the secret of success I see is aligning yourselves with good teams. And you see the perennial successful executives in this business have always taken due care and consideration in making sure that they have the best of the best around them.
Excellent, Doug. That's a very interesting approach. And what about you, Rag? What can you share with us?
My background, and pleasure being here, Isabel, by the way. My background is on the money side. I'm in the corporate finance CFO role. The focus for me has been on mining for the past 17 odd years after moving from the UK, having worked in shipping and forestry. To me, when I look at what makes a successful leader, is a combination of knowing what resources you have and utilizing those resources. There's always a big plan every year but you have to focus it in because you can't manage all of the wish list, I would say. So, ultimately speaking, being an exploration company, we have investment dollars that have been invested by shareholders out there, investment banks, etc. So we want to ensure we have a risk reward system on how we utilize those funds to better promote what our vision is. And our vision is, being exploration is discovery and bringing a resource together and ultimately looking at partners to take that into production. So, focus for me when I look at our CEO is really he's looking at his team. He builds his team out. We have a very good local team made up of people who've lived in the area and are qualified to do such things. So it's really been a focus of not only managing the capital markets, but also our human resource as well, and making sure that we've got a mutual respect for our team members and we're all pulling in the same direction.
Excellent, Rack. Thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. And in that regard, focusing a little bit more, we went through a little bit of your history and your background, focusing more on a history of a specific story that you have in the previous projects that you have worked on in the past. Can you share with us this experience and kind of share how do you think your philosophy led that story to a success? And for that, I would like to start with Kenneth, please.
Thanks, Isabel. I'll cast my mind back to the time when I was working in the Congo. I was one of the first foreign mining companies to enter the Congo in, I believe it was 1994, 95 range when Mobutu was still in power. And it took a couple of years to develop relationships at the governmental level and at the state mining enterprise, Jacquemin. And it was a very, very intense learning curve for both parties. Of course, they were not really keen on having foreign mining companies coming in the first place, but they needed the capital. And so we had to have a very, very strong education program to demonstrate to them that the Canadian philosophy was very, very different from the then Zairian philosophy. And so we were able to spend enough time educating them. And at the same time, Adolphe Lundin came in and Jean Boulle came in with American Mineral Fields. And we collectively then had a significant impact on the progress of human rights in the Congo, for one, because we treated our employees very, very well. And secondly, the relationship between the foreign mining companies and Jacquemin, the state mining enterprise, improved dramatically as a result of our intervention at that time. Now, the other thing I'd like to bring up is when I was working in the Philippines and developing the feasibility study on the 6 projects in the renewable sector, I came across in northern Luzon province, way up in the Cordillera of the Kalinga province. We were able to bring 2 warring tribes together. And these 2 tribes had been sort of pseudo-enemies for a century. In that there was a border dispute that nobody could resolve. And so we spent some time, I took my team along with my Philippine colleagues, we went in and spent some time in both of these communities and started educating them as to the benefits of development. And in this case, it was geothermal energy development. And so we were able to bring them to a point where they agreed to meet. The elders of both communities agreed to meet. But unfortunately, the 2 communities, even though they were, as a crow flies, only about 10 kilometers apart, it took all day to drive and walk and drive because there were no roads into one of the communities. And so we had to send a team in to prepare a landing pad for a helicopter so we could bring the tribal leaders from one tribe to the other, way up in the mountainside, and thereby, under the auspices of the Philippine National Commission of Indigenous People, we were able to bring the 2 tribes together and create a peace treaty between them. And it was officially signed, and it was a very special time for me to be able to bring those 2 tribes together. And as a result, I was able to secure my contract with the major tribe there that enabled me to proceed with my feasibility study. So it was very, very effective. So you have to wear many, many hats as a CEO in the resource sector. You just cannot focus on the resource alone. You have to focus on the people that you're impacting, and because unless you demonstrate to them that there is value to them and their people, and that you care about their people, then you are not going to get too far in any country in the world without that philosophy in place.
Definitely, and it also aligns with what we learned in the past century with how economic integration also leads to peace, both at a micro level and at a macro level globally. So that's very interesting what you're mentioning. Thank you, Kenneth. Now I would like to listen from Jason, please.
Thank you, Isabel. You know, although Kenneth and I didn't talk about this ahead of time, you're going to notice a lot of similarities in the stories that we tell. It's amazing that the stories that we remember are the stories of how the different resource developments that we've been involved in have changed people's lives. And so, you know, rather than focusing on my personal impact, let me tell you two stories of resource development that changed people's lives. Both Voisey's Bay in northern Labrador and El Limón Guajes in southern Mexico. These projects materially improved the lives of the Aboriginal and Ejido residents where they were built. Through responsible development, previously unimaginable opportunities were created for the good of the people that lived there. And my reward along that way was, you know, working alongside these people, learning about them and the beauty and richness of their culture. And so, yes, I had the opportunity to lead those teams for a time, but the success of those developments lasts far longer than my tenure there. And that's really what the resource industry can bring in examples like I've given and Kenneth have given.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Now I would like to go to Doug.
Well, I'm not going to repeat anything that Jason or Ken said, fortunately for the audience, in many ways, because what I'm currently doing right now is what I would think is the first time I've actually led something. I'm still, despite the lack of hair, you know, relatively young for this business. And over my first 20 plus years in this industry, I have been part of a team. And, you know, and to this day, even in my leadership role, I'm still just very much part of a team. So I've honed my skill set, being very fortunate to work with excellent mentors and excellent people, and also some people that weren't necessarily excellent, which is often where you get some of the best learning experience on the job. So what I can say is the team that I work with have been, and this is to Jason's point, you know, directly responsible for building, you know, 3 mines in the last 12 years, which have had a tremendous impact on the communities that those mines operated within. And that is our overriding and overarching kind of philosophy that, you know, we can change lives, and you can look at it on the corporate level and say, you know, we can impact people's finances as shareholders. But I think more importantly, it all starts with, you know, being chosen in many ways to represent a country in terms of developing its natural resources, you know, that has a direct impact at the community level first and foremost. And if you focus on that, then everything else should feed from it. So I still like to think that I have plenty of my career ahead of me, and now I am in that leadership role. Perhaps in a few years' time, I'll have a few more specific responses. But even as a leader, you're still just part of the team, and so I'm relishing this opportunity now after a long career where I just watched and learned from excellent people around me.
Excellent, Doug. And what about you, Brad?
So, you know, generally it's not so much of what one individual has done. I feel that it's been more of a team effort, both technically and in the capital markets. I mean, for Kootenay, we've made 4 discoveries and have been successful in raising money for those discoveries and deal making. We have a great technical team made up of local people in our Mexico office. And Kootenai itself has gone from pretty much a grassroots private company in the early 2000s, about 2005, to within 24 months of when it went public, discovering 100 million ounce silver equivalent deposit, which is, to me, was a mark of good teamwork, a lucky environment as well, and finding the right project. The philosophy is to pick, good areas of geology, and for discovery in large silver deposits in Mexico has been fruitful for us in that regard. And making drill discoveries is what we're keen on doing. To us, I think it was 2016 in a very tough silver market, knowing that silver was lagging behind gold, to say at least, to go in a contrarian point of view and look at assets that were undervalued in the Mexican market, and basically picking up an acquisition of La Cigarra at the time, which fortified our resolution that sometimes the best deposits are picked up in the worst markets. So La Cigarra is definitely in our war chest of our silver asset, and we're looking forward to turning that into a very profitable endeavor, whether that's us directly or with a partner.
Excellent. Thank you, Raj. Now I have a more personal question, and I would like to know, what is the best and what is the worst decision that you made in 2020, and how did that affected or impacted your business? And for that, I will start with Kenneth.
Thanks, Isabel. Well, 2020 was a banner year for us. It was the best year we had at Sonora Gold ever since I joined the company in 2014. We started off the year in a pretty precarious state, and I think all of us have been in that position, if not once, maybe some of us even several times before, where raising capital was a major, major challenge. And we were at a stage of our development with our Cerro Caliche project that didn't enable us to go to the brokerage firms in Toronto and London and New York and say, okay, we've arrived, now we'd like you to finance us. They thought of us as too early stage. So it was a very, very challenging first 6 months of 2020. And then the sentiment changed in the summer of 2020, and the gold price started going up, and all of a sudden we started getting phone calls. Instead of us knocking on doors, people started phoning us and saying, you were looking for money, can we assist? And lo and behold, we set the table for first of all, a $3 million financing. And next thing you know, we're at $5 million. And I have to make another announcement. We're increasing it to $8 million. And so that was a very, very sound decision for us. We supported the company personally. My colleague, John Darch, and I supported the company, brought it through the tough times. And when the financing was available, everybody was able to see the kind of benefit that having the two CEOs of the CEO and the chairman of the company have the vision that we're going to take this project through to production and nothing's going to stop us. And so if I can say one thing about whether we made a bad decision, the answer is I don't think we did, but the financing was at $8 million, and then all of a sudden it blossomed to $10 million. And we made a conscious decision to say, no, we're not going to go beyond $8 million because it's going to be excess dilution. Well, some people may argue and say, if somebody's offering you money, take it. Well, I think we made the right decision because we've been able to advance the project significantly with that $8 million financing. So I can't say that we have made any bad decisions. Maybe my colleagues may differ from me in that regard, but that's my take on it.
Excellent, very interesting. What about you, Jason?
Sure. I think Orla's decision to continue advancing our projects in a very challenging, pandemic year was the best decision we made. We found a way to continue safely, which allowed people's income to continue and for our projects to advance. Sometimes the easy thing to do is to do nothing. And that's not always the right thing as far as I'm concerned. So we had to trust that if we continued engineering and procurement for our project in Mexico, which means spending the company's money, that the permitting process in Mexico would be followed, and it was. And now we have not lost a year because of our decision to believe in the Mexican process and continue spending money in anticipation of the permitting. And we did it in a way that kept everyone healthy. So I think that that's probably the decision I would point to from last year. The worst decision, you asked for something personal. I'll give you a decision I made last year to respond to an important stakeholder in frustration, and I should not have done that. And I learned from that experience that that my behavior is important and needs to be held to a higher standard. And so I'm glad that there was no long-term damage to that relationship, but it was a good learning for me last year, and something I'll take forward with me in my career.
That is very insightful, Jason. In the end, we are still human beings behind all of the things and the problem solving. That's very interesting. What about you, Doug?
Well, we were fortunate at Minera that we had some very good tailwinds behind what we were doing that came from 2019. So we started out to 2020 looking at an improving commodity price and thinking things were going to be great. But we locked in a construction financing package in December 2019, closed it in January of 2020. And the one thing you don't want when you're building out a business vision is to be looking over your shoulder, wondering if you have the financial runway to be able to execute on your plans in a timely manner. And so obviously when things took the world for a loop in February and March and subsequently, we were very protected and sheltered from that. I think there's probably not a mining company on earth that didn't get a COVID quarter where things really did drag. Obviously, we saw in Mexico complete cessation of mining activities for a couple of months there. But because we had that financing in place, and because we have a permitting environment in place in Mexico, which I think permitting is one of the biggest challenges facing the mining industry, and Mexico have a great environment for permitting. We did only lose a few months, and it's a testament to our stakeholders at the community level and our technical team that we were able to basically stay largely on track with our pre-COVID guidance for the construction of our first mine. That would not have been achievable if we hadn't made that decision, get the funding in place right at the beginning of the year. In terms of bad decisions, and I really respected the candor of Jason there with his example. 2020 was a remarkably positive year, but if there was one thing that I would say probably in hindsight we would have done differently, was start certain resource work and just come out with a maiden resource at our first mine last year, as opposed to a decision we made to want to be able to build into that resource some narrative as to the upside of our project, which did definitely get delayed as a result of pandemic restrictions. So not the worst thing, because it hasn't really set the activities of the mine building back, but it makes it harder for me explaining the story to not have that extra component there in place. So certainly not a crippling issue as a result of not making that decision. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. What about you, Rag?
Best and worst decisions. Worst decision for 2020 is a simple personal one. I should have taken more vacation at the beginning of the year. Didn't manage to do that. So now that's just a dream that we have a little while longer to wait for it. Overall, 2020 was a challenging year for everyone, in that you had to adapt your business to continue the operations and fulfill what your mandate was. We encountered a number of business interruptions similar to the other members of the panel, and delays caused to our exploration program. However, by the end of the year, we saw that the measurement of what we had intended to do and had planned to do in our exploration programs was fulfilled with both Columba and Copelito being two separate programs. Of course, you know, without the interruption, maybe there would have been some more drilling contemplated, but the mandate at the beginning of the year was met, and based on the success of those programs, much like many others, we saw the ability to raise some capital during the middle of the year, during August. But on top of that, our existing shareholders saw from our results that it was looking positive and exercised a number of warrants that they had outstanding. So we financed for 7 million in the middle of the year, and then by the end of the year, an additional 3 million came in through our existing shareholders. So overall, though it was a challenging year, as in you had to change how you fulfill what your mandate was, it was overall a pretty successful 2020. And so we're looking forward to 2021.
Thank you, Raj. Perfect. So now I would like to move to a different dynamic. As I communicated in the morning, what I would like to offer you is the opportunity to ask each other a question. And I would like to start with Kenneth, and I would like to know what question do you have for Jason Simpson?
Okay, there's a lot of similarities in the history for Orla Mining with what we are now proceeding with. They are, you know, obviously much more advanced with their drilling program and with their permitting program and going into construction, which is wonderful. And we hope to achieve the same result within the coming 12 months. And so my question to Jason is, you advanced your Camino Rojo project through the feasibility study stage while the price of gold was substantially lower than it is today. If you had enjoyed $1,800 gold at that time, do you feel you could have advanced to construction at the pre-feasibility stage or earlier?
Well, thanks for the question, Kenneth. My answer to that is no. And the reason I say that is, you know, we did the engineering as quickly as we could, and we knew that the project that's under construction now had great margins, even at the feasibility study price we used of $1,250 gold. We recently updated that feasibility study with an enhancement we were able to achieve with our neighbors to the north, and did that updated study at a even conservative $1,600 gold price. So that particular project is not really sensitive to price, and so hence we didn't slow anything down. Nothing could have moved any faster. We green-lighted construction. We continued with engineering and procurement, even amidst the pandemic, which I've spoken about. The one delay we did incur, and I think it's understandable given the year we went through last year, when the government of Mexico needed people to work from home, you know, we had to wait for a few months for our permitting to get approved. So, you know, I don't have any control over that. I would have liked that to go more consistently with the timelines that I've experienced in Mexico in the past. But apart from that, there's really nothing else my team could have done any more quickly. Certainly was not a lack of decision making or a decision to not do something or wait. That none of those decisions were taken. My team often tells me that you know, they can't work any faster, but that won't stop me from continuing to push and accelerate things as much as possible. But thank you for the question, Kenneth.
Thanks, Jason.
Excellent. Now I will move down to Doug, and I would like to know, Doug, what question would you ask to Raj?
I guess Raj, and maybe you can speak, you know, obviously working with Jim, you know, how does Mexico compare to other jurisdictions that you've operated within, and perhaps lay out the most overriding, you know, key advantage you find in operating in the country? You're on mute. You're muted, Raj, I think.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the button for it. Sorry about that. Thanks for the question there, Doug. Well, Jim's worked in Mexico for a number of years. He was part of National Gold, which acquired the Mulatos deposit. And from that exposure, that was in early 2000s. And from that exposure, I got a really good understanding of the Mexican system, and it has changed over time. But fundamentally speaking, Mexico is a very mining-friendly jurisdiction, in my opinion. And there is a clear path. There's always hurdles, but there is a clear path to permitting and so on. For us, personally speaking, I've been involved with projects in Chile, in the US and Canada, and all have merits on their system. When I look at Mexico, especially on an exploration side of things, obtaining drilling permits, etc., has been pretty friendly to us. I mean, it's been concise. We have a really good team that works on that area of things and understands the system in place. I mean, the one thing that I would give advice to anyone who's looking at exploring in Mexico is to really understand surface ownership and access and concession titles. You need to harbor those relationships and make sure the agreements are well established and put in place, and that have good terms for both sides of the equation, whether that be with ranch owners or ejido. Sometimes it's what I find in Mexico, and it has been the case recently, is or more recently, is concessions which should be released by the government aren't done as quickly as one would like. So there's a number of concessions that you have to just use some patience to ensure that you keep your eye on when those concessions come up for availability. And so knowing the system and knowing your timelines is important, and saves wasting money unnecessarily when it comes to acquiring those concessions when they do come about.
Very interesting, Raj. Thank you so much. I would like to go back to Jason. And Jason, what would you ask to Doug Ramshaw?
Thank you. Yes, well, with Doug's financial background, I'm particularly interested in his thoughts on this subject. So, there's a lot of discussion currently about industry consolidation. So that means pressure to individuals like us to do M&A. So my question is, does Doug think mergers and acquisitions are good for our industry?
Well, yeah, I am unmuted. Unmuted, and I'm not a cat. That's an interesting question, because I think you can look at it from a number of ways. Traditionally, if you looked at it as a shareholder, you wanted the liquidity event. And in reality, I think that the company sometimes experiences pressure from its shareholders, leaves a lot of value on the table. Case in point, when Castle Gold, the predecessor to our team's work at Minera, was bought out by Argonaut, Argonaut Gold made the acquisition of Castle Gold and then Pediment Gold for about a combined $300 million. And they had a lift in value to over $1 billion. And I mean, you look at that and you go, those shareholders left a lot of money on the table. Nowadays, and Minera and Corex, which we merged a couple of years ago, was a merger of equals. So the unlocking of value now is not at a premium at the front end of a deal. It's through the combination of the assets and the companies moving forward. And I'm very proud of the fact that, we took two $25 million, companies and have turned them into a $270 million company by seeing the value of bringing those assets together in just a few short years. So from a shareholder perspective, I'm not sure if they should be looking for great premiums now. I think companies are being very smart in unlocking the value post-transaction rather than at the point of transaction. I think M&A is inevitable. you can see even the biggest companies in the world have, are depleting their resource base. They need to maintain production profiles in ever increasingly long life mines, which are drawing to an end of their lives. So I think that M&A is inevitable. I think post-COVID, we'll start seeing a lot of, I think second half of this year and into 2022, we will see a shift to M&A as these majors have, during a time where perhaps travel and other restrictions have made it harder to pull the trigger, have focused on cleaning up balance sheets and being in a place to act on M&A opportunities. And I also think it's inevitable because even with higher gold prices, we haven't seen a proliferation of new people saying, you know what we should do? We should build gold mines. We've got a few people on this panel, which represent a really small fraction of the overall companies out there that actually want to build. And I think that's where you get real value for your shareholders. It's where you can make a real impact at the community level. And so there's a certain inevitability to it. Is it good? I think it depends on which side of things you are. I don't think it's as good for shareholders as it once was, because we're starting to go into more of a merger of equals kind of approach to M&A. So yeah, I guess the number of ways you can look at it, Jason.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Doug. And now I would like to ask Raj, what would be your question to Kenneth?
Thank you. Kenneth, I mean, having worked in many various countries, off the beaten track, most of them, and with the transition for Sonora from explorer, I guess, to developer, how do you find the permitting process to be in Mexico on that transition?
Thank you, Raj. I think the permitting process in Mexico was one of the finest in the world. I look back at my experiences in the Philippines, even Chile for that matter, Congo, and especially California. And the permitting process is fraught with disasters at any given moment in most jurisdictions. And California being a perfect example. I was building a 35 megawatt geothermal power plant in the Geysers geothermal field north of San Francisco. And you would think that that would be a very simple permitting process because renewable energy is all the rage in California. But guess what? The amount of hurdles that are put in front of you during the permitting process are so daunting that they increase the cost of construction from $180 million to $220 million as a result of more and more restrictions being placed on the permitting process and the environmental process. So when I come to Mexico, it's a very transparent process. I have not had any issues with permitting from the point of view of building roads, building drill pads, and of course drilling over the past couple of years, approximately 30,000 meters of drilling. And now we're going into the construction phase by the end of this year, by the latter part of this year. And so we're entering into a new phase for me, but my team of specialists in California, in Mexico, who are living in Hermosillo, who've lived and breathed mining for the past 30, 40 years, know the process intimately, and they are capable of taking us through. They know what the pitfalls are in advance before we even submit to SEMARNAT. And so the process for me right now is fairly transparent going forward. And I fully expect to emulate the success of both Doug and Jason with respect to their recent permitting processes as well. And so I would classify Mexico as one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world, if not that some parts of Mexico I would classify as number one. And for example, the Fraser Institute would show the attractiveness index for Mexico as being something like 24 out of 82 countries. And I think that's a fallacy because what they do is they separate the Canadian provinces into each province and give them a ranking. They separate the American states into the same ranking format, and also the Australian states are separated. So when you condense those into 3 countries, you'll find that Mexico's in the top 5 of countries around the world. And each state in Mexico is very, very different. And I would classify some states in the southern part of Mexico as extremely difficult to navigate the permitting process. But in northern Mexico, it's a different story. And where we are located in Sonora State, we're surrounded by mines, producing gold mines. And so the permitting process is extremely beneficial for us because I can name 10 or 15 companies that have gone the same road before and been very, very successful. And we don't feel that with the location of our project being on ranch land, being well situated as far as power and water and no issues with heat, no issues with local population, we feel it's going to be a very transparent and pain-free process. So I like Sonora State as I would classify it on the same elevation as Nevada as far as ease of permitting is concerned.
Wow, that's very insightful, Kenneth. Thank you so much. Now I would like to move to a question that was sent by John Mark Stott, the CEO of Riverside Resources, yesterday. And we were having this conversation, Jason was in that one, and we didn't get to that question. And I really wanted to ask you because I thought it was really good. So each of you is at a different phase or chapter of your development. At an operational, financial, organizational, and cultural level, all of those aspects are different. So in each of your opinion, what do you see as the most significant challenge facing you as a leader and as a company when you, in the moment right now where you're beginning to write the next chapter for yourself and the company? So I would like to start now with Raj, please.
Thanks, Isabel. Let's see. I mean, as I've mentioned before, we're an exploration phase company, and as such, it's really employing our available funds to enhance the projects we have. We had a maiden drill program on Copelito last year, which is very much a grassroots project, has never had any modern day exploration done on it. For us, it's really a case of employing our funds and fulfilling what we need to do to take those projects to the next level. When I'm looking at it, when we negotiated Colombo and Copelito, and we're continuously looking at new operations, sometimes these negotiations take over. For Colombo, it took nearly 2.5 years to complete, and Copelito another year, and that was to make sure that the agreement was workable for both sides, given where the market was. So for us, we're trying to look to be ahead of the curve, look at what potential assets are still outstanding or still available, or hidden assets are available in Mexico, because there are a number of assets still there. The surprising thing, even with this long history of exploration work in Mexico, there are projects that are yet to be discovered or to be dusted off. I mean, historic projects. Colombo was mined in the early 1900s. So we're really looking at focusing on moving our projects from drill discovery up to a resource stage, and for some, such as La Sagara and La Negra, resource in the PEA stage, and seeing whether, the production cycle and how that looks like for us, given that, it may not be us taking it to production or doing so with a partner. So really the viewpoint for the upcoming year is to fulfill what we've planned on our forthcoming exploration program going forward, and then ticking off some check marks against what we want to achieve for each project with the treasury we have on hand.
Thank you, Raj. What about you, Doug? What do you think is the biggest challenge that you're facing going to the next step?
I think we're somewhat fortunate in that we've come out of that most challenging phase for the company. There's the classic Lassonde curve, and it has two peaks to it and a big ugly trough between those. And, you know, the project that we're building right now was first drilled 12 years ago. I think sometimes people forget just how long a project can take from exploration to production. Even though we're lucky in Mexico, the latter stages, I think, are a lot quicker than in other jurisdictions. But between that excitement of exploration and then the excitement of actually producing gold, there is an orphan period where you are traditionally caught up in, you know, very boring news releases on permitting and the like. As I said, we're fortunate that that's behind us, and we're fortunate that it really wasn't that painful for our stakeholders, but, you know, both the community seeing the advancement of the project and our shareholders, because of the environment for permitting in Mexico. So, you know, I'm thankful that we're on the right-hand side of Mr. Lassonde's curve now. I know that there will still be challenges ahead. Every mine that our team has built in the past has had teething problems, and I always tell them teething problems is fine, it goes with the territory. You know, what we want to do is make sure that all the work that's led up to this has made sure that there is no Achilles heel to the project. And so, you know, no, I would like to think, I hope that for us as the mining community and the community at large in the world, that 2020, you know, can be put in the rearview mirror, that things improve in 2021, and certainly from a position of Minera Alamos, so we're obviously really excited to be a new gold producer this year, and really in this giant, you know, sphere of mining and exploration companies. It's a pretty exclusive group to get into, you know, to actually be a producer of gold, and all the benefits that country, community, and shareholder level that can live to. And certainly, I've been a huge advocate that the industry doesn't build enough. So the best way to get off that particular soapbox issue I have is to actually develop a gold producer in its own right. So. I think the worst is behind us, fortunately, but that orphan period of the Lassonde curve is exactly as advertised. It's a tough couple of years, and then some jurisdictions, many years to be sitting in. But as I said, that's in our rearview mirror.
Excellent, Doug, and we'll be watching from Mexico Business. We are very attentive to all of you guys' progress. Okay, perfect. So I would like to go to Jason, please.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Lassonde is our second largest shareholder at Orla, so I'm very familiar with the curve and speak to him about it frequently. And I constantly assure him that we'll, you know, the faster we can pour gold this year, the better off we'll be. You know, and as we transition from construction into production this year, you know, we can expect some things I've experienced before. You know, in my experience at Torex has taught me that stakeholder expectations change as you make that that transition. We spoke, Doug just eloquently described, you know, the shareholders are expecting a return as you move into that production re-rate territory. So the important thing for us at Orla is balancing the interests of all of our stakeholders is always paramount. And certainly the shareholders are one of those stakeholders, but it includes our employees, the community surrounding us, and the government of Mexico. And I can tell you that those interests are not always aligned. And so our job is to find and maintain a balance where each interest is respected. And you do that through first understanding what each of their interests are and why. And then finding solutions that all stakeholders can respect. So that's a sequence, you know, I've been through before, and now Orla is about to experience, and so we'll need to navigate that balance.
Excellent, Jason. Thank you. What about you, Kenneth?
Well, I feel that we are somewhere in the transition phase between what Doug has accomplished with Minera Alamos and what Jason has accomplished with Orla. And Jason, of course, has gone all the way through to the feasibility study stage, and has got a very large proven and probable resource. And Doug they've taken the decision that maybe influenced a little bit by their experience over the years in bringing projects through to production at an earlier stage. And if you look at the Chester Miller School of Mining, our technical team have essentially rubbed shoulders with Chester and worked closely with Chester over the years. And Chester's philosophy was you put some holes in, yeah, you're building a resource, build a leach pad and we'll test it ourselves, and then put it into production and generate additional revenue from the cash flow to continue increasing the resource. Now that's a great scenario. I don't think that we have Chester's ability to be able to realize that for ourselves. So we've gone several steps further in that we're bringing the project through the PEA stage over the coming months, and we've got the metallurgical testing underway. The 43-101 resource report is being upgraded, and the PEA will then be completed. And our intention is to secure project financing based upon a PEA. And it's obviously a challenge. It reduces the pool of financiers quite substantially, maybe as much as 60 or 70%. But that remaining 30% that we're discussing on a daily basis with are very enthused about the project. And we have every confidence that we will be able to secure the project financing based simply on the PEA in the middle of this year. So I've been watching everybody's progress with great interest over the past while, and learning from your experiences as well. And hopefully we'll be able to capitalize upon your previous experiences over the coming 6 months.